Hey, what's up, you guys? It's Bloody Jacob to bring you my weekly review of The Walking Dead. And this week's episode was entitled Consumed. We're good. Okay, so after last week's episode, which I actually enjoyed quite a bit, I believe it was called Self-Help. And, we mainly focused on Abraham and, the rest of the cast we've seen last week included, the likes of Tara, Glenn, Maggie, Rosita, and Eugene after we found out about Eugene, about him lying and stuff. I enjoyed that episode quite a bit. I thought it did a pretty good job of, mixing in that action and, character development as well. So I thought that was really well done. And this week's episode, overall, I thought it was decent. I'll just say right off the bat that my feelings towards the episode are probably somewhat affected by the fact that I'm not really the biggest fan of Daryl or Carol. And I know I could get a lot of people pissed off, but you see, Carol, I really do appreciate the character development she's had over the course of the series. Going from the abused, woman, to being so strong and arguably one of the toughest survivors. But, so I definitely appreciate how far she's come from, being in that position. But I guess I've never really bought her as being a real badass, you could say. Like, how she all of a sudden started getting so good at firing guns, I'm not so sure. And, I don't really buy her being able to, organize or get through that whole assault on Terminus either. And people say, oh yeah, but she survived on her own when Rick forced her to leave the group. But we just seen a flashback of that in this episode, and she apparently didn't have to go through much at all in order to survive on her own. Luckily. She really just snuck around and found a building that she stayed in for a little bit. And that was pretty much it. Went off without a hitch. So it's not like she really had to do much on her own anyway. Before she, seen the smoke coming from the prison and stuff, which was cool to see. But I just haven't seen much that adds up to Carol being able to do all these things all of a sudden. It's sort of like with Beth and Slabtown, how she is all of a sudden able to, nail all these walkers in the head and be such a good shot, with a handgun and stuff like that. Just out of nowhere, pretty much. Not quite as much for Carol. Not out of nowhere quite as much for Carol. But I just don't really buy her being this stern, wise survivor, because we haven't really seen much evidence of that. But that's just me, and you guys can debate with me in the comments if you would like, if any of you guys actually watched the video. But, so that's why I don't like Carol. That's why I don't like Carol. Although I do think Melissa McBride does a great job. She's a very good actress. She's very good in the role. I just don't think the writing for the character has been as detailed as it should be if we are to believe that she's supposed to be this badass now. This badass hardened survivor. Yes, she put down Lizzie, which, takes a lot to do. She was a child and stuff, but that doesn't mean she's all of a sudden, physically capable on the level of Daryl or something. But I'm not saying she can't be. I'm just saying we should have seen, a little bit more evidence or a little bit more proving that led up to all this, but we haven't really seen that. But, again, I still like the acting on Melissa McBride's part. But why don't I like Daryl too much? I still do. But Daryl hasn't been overly interesting to me since Season 2 and about midway through Season 3. Because, he was still that lone wolf, and he was still struggling, with the opening up to people and fitting in. He was more openly hostile and defensive and stuff like that. I sort of like that. That was interesting. But ever since, it's cool that he's developed into being a more trusting person and being more open with people and more caring and stuff like that. It's great. It's good development. But I don't know. He's just felt kind of wooden since that's happened. You know what I mean? He's sort of like a dull, static type of character now. Not really dynamic or compelling or complex or anything like that. And besides the story he told Beth about, what he was before the apocalypse last season, and still is kind of underwhelming anyway. But I still like Daryl. I still enjoy him. He's a fun character, but I just don't think he's just not one of my favorites. My favorite character on the show by far is Rick, and Rick Michonne. I actually like Tara more than Carol. Don't kill me too soon anyway. But, okay, let's actually talk about the episode. How about that? So this episode is mainly dedicated to seeing, Carol and Daryl on their own and stuff like that. And, of course, they're after the car. They're following the car to try and find, where it led to. They'd be assuming that it was the same car that took Beth. Or one of the hospital's vehicles they use anyway, with the white cross on it. And so we followed that around. I like the tone in the night scenes. But some people were actually complaining that the night scenes were a little bit too dark, that I could hardly make out some things. They did that last week, too. But I thought the night scenes were actually pretty good. They had a good tone to them that actually felt a little bit ever so slightly scary, but not too much. Like the shadows and the silhouettes of the walkers surrounding them and stuff like that. That was cool. And, them trying to avoid being seen by Don's, boys and stuff like that. That was good. Although I think they probably should have been spotted, which apparently they were anyway. Not a whole lot happened in this episode, honestly. There's not a whole lot to talk about. But they do run into Noah, Mr. Everybody Hates Chris. And, at first he basically holds him at gunpoint and steals their crossbow, Daryl's crossbow and, any other guns they have and stuff like that. But of course they run into him later. We'll get to that in a few minutes. There was something kind of funny in this episode, though. There's just they're walking through a building and there's these walkers trapped in sleeping bags and tents and stuff like that. It's kind of ridiculous, but at the same time pretty funny. That was just funny to see them rolling around there and the tents just shaking and falling over and stuff like that. Let's see what else. There's also I was actually hoping for more conversations between Daryl and Carol in this, because I do think that they should be an item on the show. I ship Daryl and Carol being together. I just think it makes a lot more sense than Daryl and Beth, so I hope if they give Daryl a love interest, they go with Carol, because it actually does make sense with all they've shown between them since, especially season 2 and stuff. But, I just wish they would have had more dialogue between each other, more personal conversations. They did in the episode, but they were usually cut off pretty quickly. They talked a little bit more about Lizzie and Mika, even though Carol still didn't really tell Daryl what happened to him. She just said it was worse than them just not making it. And, just had some banter over paintings and stuff like that. I was just hoping for a little bit more deeper conversations between the two of them, a little bit more extended anyway. But again, Norman Reedus and Melissa McBride both have fairly good acting in this episode, so I did appreciate that, even though they're not my favorite characters like they are for some others. Daryl, it's still fun to watch with the action and stuff like that. And really, there's not much to talk about as far as the story goes this week. And we've had 3 episodes now that we've been away from Rick and the rest of our main group. So based on the previews, we're going back to them next week. But they do end up running into Noah again, and it turns out Noah had actually been following them because he doesn't think he can actually survive on his own. So he's following them so they clear the way for him and show him where to go and find good places to hide out and stuff. And Daryl caught on to it, and he basically knocked over a shelf on him and pinned Noah down. And he's basically going to let a walker get in and, devour him, basically, after he took back his crossbow. Because Noah had, also thrown, a walker into Carol, so Daryl was really pissed off about that. About almost killing Carol. So suddenly Carol's not quite as capable as she was at Terminus, but I don't know what they're doing. But anyway, there was also a bit of a car accident, 2 of them actually. They actually tracked down one of the other vehicles the hospital was using at some point. It had the white cross on the back, but it was like a van. It was on the bridge. That was one really good thing about this episode, though. I did really like seeing the city of Atlanta again. They did that really well. I mean, I know what they probably do is they show the city, they film on location, but they use CGI to have like the effects of the smoke and the rubble and stuff like that, which it looks pretty good for the most part. I really like that. It's especially, it feels a little bit more fresh compared to like the woods and forest areas all the time and stuff like that. But they track down that van on the bridge, and they're hoping they can find like something that tells them where they're holed up at, basically, or something along those lines. And they get trapped on the bridge because all of a sudden like a small horde of walkers, or not small, but like probably between 10 and 15 walkers start showing up on the bridge. So they think it's a good idea to get in the van that's about hardly on the bridge. It's about to tip and go over one way or the other. So they think it's a good idea to put all their weight on one end of the van and go in a van that's about to fall off a bridge as walkers are surrounding it. Why? I don't get it. I actually think it would have been a better idea if they just tried to fight through the horde a little bit and just keep on running on the bridge and get down from there, instead of going on a van that's about to completely fall over. Quite a few stories anyway. And this is where it gets kind of ridiculous. They get in the van, they basically realize, oh yeah, we're gonna fall, we're gonna crash here, so brace yourself. And it's just really odd how this is shot, because the van's tipping like this, and just as the van's going off, it looks like it's going to go like a nosedive and land on the hood or like the roof. It's going to flip a little bit anyway, and probably fall on the roof of it, on the roof of the van. But instead, just as it's angled showing falling this way, the next shot shows them just falling flat on the ground. And it's just really funny and kind of dumb how they edited that, but I guess you could say it could have flipped and done a complete 360 before it hit the ground. That's about the only explanation you can use. But even that, I don't think so. I think it was going to flip and land on the nose and then go on the roof, or just land flat on the roof at least. It wasn't going to completely just go like that and all of a sudden... So that was kind of defying some logic there. And Daryl's perfectly okay, he's a superhero and stuff. And Carol, I think, injures her hand or her wrist or something like that. She's a little bit more banged up. And like I said, that's when they run into Noah again, and Daryl pins him down at the shelf. And it's funny, Carol's acting all cold, and she begs Daryl to save the kid because to save Noah. So they're kind of contradicting the characters there again, but Daryl just was really bitter to him. I actually like how they wrote Daryl here. He was really bitter to him, and he was going to leave Noah behind to be feasted upon by the walker, or kill the walker and just leave him pinned under the shelf. Because he basically put Carol in harm's way and stole from him and things like that. But I think putting Carol in harm's way is what put him over the edge. But of course, Carol persuades Daryl to help him anyway. He lifts up the bookshelf, and they eventually start, traveling with each other. And that's when they spot one of the, the hospital's vehicles with a white cross on it. It's strolling along. Probably had spotted them at some point while they were watching. And, they're all running, and for some reason, Carol decides to run, way ahead of Daryl, and basically gets ran over by the vehicle, the hospital vehicle. And Daryl and Noah manage to stay hidden. Daryl wants to go out and just, kill them all and defend Carol. But, Noah holds him back, basically saying, they're going to heal her, they're going to make her better. And, we need a bigger group to do this, And, so Daryl basically says, yeah, I have some people. Yeah, I have some people. Yeah, I have some, I don't know. Daryl's not Batman, at least not yet. But, so it's basically obvious what's going to happen within the next 2 episodes, especially for the mid-season finale. Daryl and Noah are going to go back there. That was probably Noah behind Daryl, a few episodes ago. And, the one that Daryl was telling to come on out. And we're basically going to most likely see Daryl bring Rick and the rest of the group to the hospital and have Noah show them the way, and they're going to try and get Carol and Beth out of there. Because Noah had said earlier I knew a girl named Beth, and, she helped him get out and stuff. Because, she was like a very sharp, shot all of a sudden. So that helped out. But, So it's pretty predictable it's going to happen. But it should still be pretty fun, at least action-wise. And it's going to be good when we get back to Rick and the rest of them next week, because they're, quite a bit more interesting, except Sasha. But, so yeah, again, I probably enjoyed this episode more than Slabtown, Beth's episode, but I didn't enjoy it quite as much as Self-Help, Abraham and Eugene's episode last week. And I didn't enjoy it quite as much as the other Rick group-focused episodes earlier in the season. But I do think it was better than Slabtown. I appreciated the acting with Reedus and McBride. That was well done. But I just thought there could have been more between them. Could have been a little bit more conversation or dialogue between them. I really enjoyed seeing the city again. That was probably my favorite part of the whole episode. But just not focusing on characters I'm overly interested in, but not terrible by any means. So still enjoyable. I still like the parts with the sleeping bag and the tents and stuff with the walkers. That was pretty comical. But the part with the van was just kind of stupid. But still, The Walking Dead's never terrible. It's usually, at worst, it's decent. So I look forward to the episode next week because we're getting back to Rick's group. So I'll catch you guys with my review for that one, as well as my review for Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, this coming weekend. We'll be doing that again, continuing each entry per weekend. So I'll catch you guys for those, and peace.